Hi, everybody. My name is Alan Shelton. I am a long-time entrepreneur and corporate executive, in addition to having done leadership and spiritual development work in the corporate arena. Um, and so today I'm presenting 5 secrets for people feeling trapped and hopeless in their careers. And we have a lot to get to today, so let's get rolling. Uh, Before we launch, I want to tell you a little story. This is the story of the hole, very important. So a guy is walking down the street and he falls into a hole. And much like our picture here, the sides are so steep that it seems impossible for him to get out, but he tries anyway. He keeps at it hour after hour, and of course, he slips back down again on every attempt. You can see that's what would happen here. And after a while, he realizes that he can see who's walking by if he cranes his neck just at the perfect angle. So of course, as luck would have it, a doctor passes by and he thinks, man, it's my lucky day. So he shouts up, hey, can you help me out? The doctor, being a doctor, writes a prescription, throws it down the hole and moves along. Not much help there. So not long afterward, a priest comes by and the fellow thinks, well, longer shot, but what the heck? He says, Father, he yells out, I'm down in this hole. Please, can you help me? Well, the priest scribbles down a prayer, throws it down the hole, and moves on. Another strikeout. Then, to the man's elation, one of his friends walks by, and he thinks, "Man, it's my now. I'm making it happen." And he yells up, "Joe, it's me. Am I ever glad to see you? Give me some help down here, okay?" At this, his friend jumps into the hole, and our guy, he says, "Are you stupid? Now we're both down here." His friend looks at him with a little smile on his face and says, yeah, but I've been down here before and I know how to get out. As we go through this today, I want you to dial in on that story. It's really important. What I'm talking about today was the major happening in my life and in my corporate career and bent my entire path once I hit this wall. This feeling that my corporate career was completely stopped and there was no way to get out. So before we launch into the 5 secrets, I want to check in and I want to see if any of these sound like you. This is who it's for. It's for those who feel trapped in their career and they wonder if a rekindling of new momentum is even possible. For most of us, that sense of momentum is a big piece of what's gone. And along with that, of course, is passion. So it's for those whose passion in their career has evaporated. You ever notice passion and momentum seem to go together? So what used to be life's purpose, I don't know about you, but I always felt like that this is where I belonged. And all of a sudden that came into question because what I was doing felt like a trudge through darkness, as it were. And I never expected my corporate life to feel like that. And of course, for those who feel great about climbing the ladder, I'm sure you've all felt that experience. I certainly did. But now your career simply sucks. And inside you feel fake or like an imposter. Now the reason that's the case is that you're doing the same thing you always did. You used to have all of this passion, excitement, purpose, and now you're just going through the motions because the piece that drove it, those pieces are gone. And then of course, I got to talk about the hole again. So if you feel like you're in a hole because you don't know where to turn for help, this is for you. And likely you doubt that there's anybody out there who can help you. So today I have a big promise for you. Here's what I'm going to go through in this webinar. I cannot overstate that this is 5 secrets or 5 absolute basics for you to step into the next piece if you're going to move out of this experience that you're having right now. So today you're going to be exposed to 5 secrets that you need to know before you can even think about emerging from the way you feel. You're going to gain clear insight on how to launch into the journey. That's the journey many have taken to step into this formidable challenge. The thing you need to know is that this happens for a lot of folks. It doesn't happen for, there's a lot of folks it doesn't happen for. But for most people who are moving fast and actually expect some vibrancy and some tangibility to their life experience, when that goes away, that's a big problem. So you're going to see how to step out of that and launch into a different journey. Your frustration is going to be transformed into possibility. Sounds like a big promise, but the reality is, you know, and I know we're all built that way. The minute we see a possibility, we know how to step into it. So where you are right now is just stopped and you don't see that possibility. If I expose it to you, I expect you can step into it. So you get to see that your career difficulties are actually an invitation for spiritual growth. And I'll explain how that works later. You're going to be taught the reason why seminars and leadership books are inadequate solutions for your current situation. I certainly know I read a lot of them. And then you'll understand why you need mentorship and a community, to support you. That's just how it is. So before we move into the teaching, I want to check in with you one more time. And here it is, my promise to you, 5 breakthroughs that will prepare you to energize your career and transform your life. So again, does this sound like you? You've done everything they told you to do, but still you feel mired in a continuous rut. You're asking yourself, how did things turn out this way? You want to act, but you have no idea where to begin or what to attack. Notice I use the word attack because that's kind of how we all jump on things. And the approaches you've tried, they're not working. And you're frustrated, and my guess is you're getting more frustrated as you go. And you want to find someone who's been there, exactly where you are, but you don't know who that is. And you wonder if this is the best you'll ever feel inside your career and likely the other parts of your life as well. I want to point out that for us, most of us who embrace our career in a holistic or wholesale manner, our life lives inside of that as well. So when I'm talking about your career, I'm likely talking about your life. And the most important one, do you feel trapped and do you feel hopeless in your career? And do you feel what comes with that, the powerlessness to change it? So that's the big one, and that's the title of the webinar. So here's the thing, I want to tell you just to start that you've come to a place and now you're stepping off into a new place. This is different than a lot of the issues you faced before. So what you're feeling right now, all of those feelings I've kind of discussed, the do you belong here, those are symptoms. Those aren't the real problem. Here's the real problem. Your life experience, education, and familial upbringing, I probably could have thrown in a couple other things, but you know what I mean. The entirety of what you bring to play here that you have been given as what it is or how it is you approach life, well, that piece failed to teach you about who you truly are and what a career truly is. And so the good news is I'm going to go through these 5 secrets, these 5 principles. I'm going to show them to you today, and in the hope that you're going to be able to see the life-changing perspective that comes with those and that you're going to need to in order to emerge from the hole. So once you see the way forward, well, I'm kind of hoping this is what you're going to look like. And if you do, that's an exciting moment. It's the aha moment. A lot of times there's a lot of work to do after that, but boy, that's the feeling when you see the way forward. And in words, you're going to feel alive and authentically whole in an entirely new way. Now, notice I'm using a lot of feeling words today, and that's on purpose. And that alive and authentic feeling, that's going to power your way forward. Now, it's going to power your way forward in a new terrain you never realized was there, or if you did, it was probably fuzzy. So either way, we're going to step into that new terrain, or you're going to be shown where that new terrain is to step into it. Now, once that starts to happen, the people around you, they're going to sense that something's changed in you. They're going to feel your presence. And again, presence is a word, really important. I'm laying the groundwork for where it is we're stepping into. And you're going to see fresh and dynamic approaches to your hopelessness and despair. And those are going to come to you effortlessly. And there's a reason for that, and I'll explain that to you later. You're going to have no qualms about living as you really are, and people are going to feel your unguarded willingness to be real. You may notice this is not the most polished webinar you're probably ever going to listen to, but it is, there's an unguarded authenticity to it because that's the way I do things. You're going to radiate wisdom, and you're naturally going to be of service to all the people around you. Again, there's reasons for that. And the constant sense of being trapped or hopeless, that's going to leave. And your true essence, that'll be seen, which will create happiness and inner peace. And that's what we're up to. That's what we're up to today, and that's where we're headed. So one last little thing, I think you probably need to know who I am. Who's this voice from the sky who's speaking to you? Here you see me, I'm with a dog. You're going to see me with dogs in most of my pictures. I grew up in Southern California in the Orange Grove, so I'm kind of a California hick. I was lucky enough to go to school, got a degree in accounting and all that wonderful stuff. But at a personal level, you're going to see lots of dogs. I love elephants. Everybody knows that. Live out in a remote agricultural area in Hawaii. Have a wife who's a yoga therapist, 2 children, both with business degrees. So if you want to know if the disease travels generationally, it does. And I just bought a new tractor, which is pretty exciting. And this may be important to you. You know, I'm a lifelong corporate animal. That's what I call us. We love to be on our terrain, the corporate terrain. That's a different kind of terrain than I was speaking about earlier, but nonetheless, that's where we live our life. So I started out selling golf balls and mistletoe, go down in the old oak wash and shoot it out of the trees, find golf balls in the ponds and in the weeds. And then I became a CEO in my later career at several organizations. And then even later than that, I created story and developmental curriculum for large brands like Vans, North Face, Nike, and others. And I want you to see all of that's related. We are in a certain way on a specific journey, and most of us have been on that journey our whole life. I'm the creator of Story Theory. That's a product of a think tank called Globalish Institute in Los Angeles, which I founded. I'm the author of Awakened Leadership. It's still widely read today. It's in use in several universities. And Stephen Covey, one of my personal mentors, called my mentorship an original work of overwhelming genius. It's always nice when your mentors chime in for you. So why am I talking to you today? Well, I started out telling you the story of the hole. You see, I was one of those that was stuck in that very same hole. And how did that come to be? Well, I was always destined to be in business. There was really, that was the natural thing. I thought for some time I might be a philosophy professor, and maybe I am in a certain way, but the allure of the action and the being on the business platform always grabbed me. So I started and sold a business in college. As I said, I became a seasoned executive. There was a long stretch between those two things, but the path was always there. But there came a day when none of it made sense. So I had done everything they told me to do. I could check the boxes off, and I was miserable inside, and that made no sense to me. And not only that, like most of us, when you get into that kind of a place, you're frantic. You're not really interested in staying in that place. You know, where had my magic gone? I was the fair-haired boy that everything happened for. So I was blessed with world-class mentors. I had CEOs around me. Stephen Covey and Peter Drucker were both personal mentors. And the reality was that the problem was deeper than that. The experience that I was mired in had a deeper response that needed to show itself. So at the age of 36, I sold my large merger and acquisition firm. It was the first large company I created. And I had read every book and attended every seminar that promised to help. And I mean, anything I get my hands on. And in the end, I left to India for several years. Crazy reaction, I'm sure. And the reason is I heard one man speak, and I was sure he knew how to solve this problem or where one needed to go. So I spent many years there. And one day, the spiritual mentorship of those years broke through. And since that day, that I emerged from my own hole, I have taught and created spiritual principles for executives and even written a book. And why would I do this? Well, I'm endlessly drawn to helping those get out of the hole that I was once in and where I thought I probably would spend the rest of my life. I want you to notice something here. I am not shy to use the word spiritual. You can call it developmental, but it is the part of us that has to do with presence and has to do with who we are. And it's the part that we tend to explore very little in our ascent in business. And eventually, when we do, it's usually located in something called leadership in the corporate world. And but what it is it's the spiritual journey. And so when I talk to you about something, anything that's spiritually related, that is what I'm talking about. And I want you to be able to zero in on that. All right. So let's take a journey. Here we go. Are you ready? There's 5 secrets that you must unlock before you have a chance at solving your current crisis. I'm going to go over all of those now. Are you ready? Okay, number 1. Here's the thing. I mentioned that you're going to be looking at a new terrain. So here's the thing. In order to actually meet that challenge, the challenge of stepping into that, you have to do some preparation. You have to prepare in a different way than you've prepared for other problems. Much like after you go scuba diving, if you want to climb a mountain, you likely are going to have to change gear, you're going to have to change mindset, and you actually are into a brand new challenge. So you have to prepare. And there are 3 skills that you must master in order to leave the hole. So here's your preparation piece. You must learn how to harness laser-focused urgency while remaining openly curious. And the reason I put that in there is that a lot of us are used to laser-focused urgency. Now, when I talk about that, I'm not talking about the kind of laser-focused urgency that is on your to-do list where you have 10 things on the list. I'm talking about the laser-focused urgency of being underwater and wanting air. It's the one thing that you have to have. Believe it or not, this problem's much like that. Now, that's an interesting thing. Most people, when they take that laser-focused urgency and they lock it in, what they don't do is they don't remain openly curious. And the reason you have to also carry that along with you is that you're entering into a new terrain. You need to remain openly curious about what that is. So both the urgency and the openness and the curiosity all have to accompany one another. And that's something for you to take a look at. Start to notice that when you're in one of those places, you likely aren't in the other, but you have both pieces in you. So I'm saying you need to put those together. The other thing you need to understand is that up till now, most all of your experience, you believe, has been on the outside. So you need to come to understand that your internal frame, the way that you see the outside world, well, that creates your external experience. And up until now, you have been in what we call the path of knowledge. In other words, you've been acquiring knowledge, putting it into play. And if you need to do a project, you go figure out what the resources are that you need. How am I going to get them? How am I going to put them together? What am I going to then put into a package in order to execute on what it is the initiative is? And those are all accumulating, identifying, and working with outside pieces. But this is a different exercise. This is an exercise of understanding that who you are is entirely dictated by how you see who you are from the inside. So now you're moving into a new world and you're moving into the path of wisdom. Path of wisdom is much, much different than the path of knowledge. You notice the words I used. That's why I pointed them out. They're words of presence. When you are in the presence of a great leader or someone who is incredibly wise, you know it. You don't know it because of your knowledge. You know it because you can sense that you are in that presence. You know what that looks like. People will magnetize to it. People will follow people like that. That's why leadership is one of the big areas. And so I want you just to understand that. Now, up till now, you've used all knowledge style approaches. And you're going to probably still want to lean into those, but you're going to see those don't work. So I always kind of tell a story. There's the old story of the Titanic, about how in the Titanic, the boat is hit an iceberg and it's on its way down. And there's a little cute remark about how some people's reaction was to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. That's what the path of knowledge is going to give you when you're being invited into the path of wisdom. The issue that you're facing is like the Titanic going down, and your knowledge capabilities give you the possibility of rearranging the deck chairs. And so I just want you to see that. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Knowledge-based approaches are great when knowledge-based solutions are needed. That's not what's needed here. So on the back end of that, I want to just read a testimonial to you. Alan opens wide a doorway and beckons us to walk with him on a very personal and touching journey. His advice to prepare my escape by seeing a new path of wisdom changed my world forever. I experienced something I did not expect, a new felt sense of authenticity and possibility. Mark S. Now notice again the words, touching journey, personal journey, experience, I experienced, authenticity and possibility. Those are not knowledge words. Those are actually wisdom words. And so when people step into this place and they say something about their reflection of having been there, they are likely to use wisdom terms. And you're going to see that as we go along. I use them all the time. In fact, that's about all you're going to get from me. All right, you ready for the next one? Secret number 2. You must discover your story identity. That's kind of an interesting thing to think about. What is a story identity? And I'm going to tell you that right now. All right, so knowing who you are requires that you understand the nature of story. So what is story? Well, think about a child, or when you were a child, the very first way that you learned how to communicate something was through story. If you ask a 3 or 4-year-old child something, they're going to put together a story for you and recite it. Now, we keep that talent. We later learn that things like concepts and theories and spreadsheets and the like are somehow more important than that. But the reality is that the original nature of story is at your deepest core. And if you think about who you are, if I said who are you, who you think right now you are right now is called a story identity. And what it is it's a collection of those stories that you've accumulated over a lifetime. And think about how you use those. You walk into a room and someone says, you feel the need to tell them who you are, or they ask you who you are. And you are going to take those myriads and myriads of stories, and you're going to take pieces from them and actually give them typically a newly comprised or constructed story. And that story is going to be what they get. And all that is out of your collection. So that's your story identity for that moment. Now, I hope that you see that this story identity thing, it's moving. It's a whole bunch of pieces. And you're picking out pieces and using them. Likely when you think about who you are, you think about something different every single time. So the who you are really is nothing fixed, but rather something that moves around depending on what calls it out. And that's your story identity. So you need to discover that that's what you do, and that's how you assemble it, and that's what you live inside. So discovering that story identity, it prepares you to see the new terrain that wisdom creates for you. And so here's the next thing. So now when you see your story identity, well, that's a cover or a fake identity. It covers your true identity. Well, that's kind of interesting. So secret number 3 is you must discover your true identity. Notice I put these two right together because I want you to see you need to see your story identity, which I just explained to you what it is. And now there's something deeper. It's your true identity. And that's the part that we very seldom visit, recognize, or tap into. And you have to see that story identity isn't who you really are. So how does this all work? Well, let me use a metaphor, because in the path of wisdom, you're going to see that we no longer identify things as true or solid, but rather we point to an experience. So I'm going to tell you a little metaphor, and this is what I call a pointer. Your true identity is like an engine. And what it is just pure power and pure presence. And what it does is, when driven into your intellect and into your ability to output and create, it creates all of those stories. But what it creates isn't what it is itself. So that story identity, seeing it, watching it, is really important, and then understanding that there's something underneath that. A lot of us would call that consciousness. That consciousness itself, the engine of experience and self, drives out these stories, and that's who you truly are. That's your true identity. So how does discovering your true identity get you out of the hole? Well, for the first time, you're going to tap into something that is absolutely rock solid. It's the authenticity of who you are. It's the reality of who you are. It's your true identity. Now, when you speak like this, a lot of times people go, wow, this is pretty woohoo. It's out there. Now, the reason that's true is because in our minds, as we go along, we place it out there. We locate, we say, hey, doing something like this is a thing that's in the woohoo area. And spiritual, actually, when you use that term, is one of those. Esoteric is another one. But I'm here to tell you that's not how it works. I've been tasked with developing executive presence in large corporations and smaller companies for several years. And what they're asking me to do is find the true identity of the leaders in the companies, so that they can exude their presence, because that's the part that everybody is looking to arrive at. Now, of course, the corporate world looks at it for their own self-interest. The reality is that life itself is always going to push you towards that. And if you use a set of tools that don't work, you're going to feel the frustration that brought you to this webinar. And when you see that there's a new set of tools, you're going to put those in place and move into that essence. So interestingly enough, this is just kind of a ho-hum, like anything else you've ever experienced in the corporate world. This is a on-the-ground, real, tangible exercise. So if you see or hold this as something esoteric, you may want to drop that boundary, because I'm taking you dead into the middle of that one. So that's how discovering your true identity, it gets you out of the hole. And that's secret number 3. So first of all, prepare. Second of all, see that there is a story identity. And believe it or not, we don't spend a lot of time looking at that one. So getting used to the fact that that's how it is, and then understanding that there is an authentic, true you that drives all of this into being. And that's the place that we want to locate you, and that's the place that will move you out of the hole. So here's another testimonial. I thought I knew who I was. I didn't. Like Alan, I too was a hardcore business person, seeking some relief from my own existential hole. This relief was stubbornly elusive. Seeing my story and true identity changed all that. This small awakening has given me the sense of fulfillment, expansion, and purpose to my career. Now remember the things we talked about that were missing? Notice in that last sentence, fulfillment, expansion, purpose. That's the stuff you're not feeling anymore, right? Once again, nothing that you're going to go find in the knowledge world. I mean, that's not a piece of funding. It's not an initiative. It's not some description. It's not an execution piece. It's none of those. It's the part that you're actually missing. And the question is, how do you arrive at that part? All right. So here you go. You got to see that the fake story identity, secret number 4, cannot become fulfilled and happy. So I explained that to you, that fake story identity, knowing that they're both there, knowing that you engage in it all the time, and it's fine that you do, right? But you don't want to depend on it to deliver you from the feelings that you're having right now. And why is that? Well, the mind is a funny thing, and it holds all of those story pieces for you to dip into. It's almost like a storage in your computer. You can go pull the pieces whenever you want to. So what that story identity and the story identity storage space is for is to utilize. It's for action in the world when you are engaging with other people that are onboarding the intellectual deliveries of the mind. That's what it is. But like your mind, if you depended on your mind, you know how you get up one day and you feel wonderful and you want a cup of coffee, and you wake up the next day and you don't feel that way at all? Well, guess what? There's a reason for that. That's because that story identity cache, it's a moving exercise. It onboards new pieces, it forgets other pieces, it assembles things in different ways. It's not something dependable. And in and of itself, you can spend a lifetime watching that story identity. But the belief that somehow or another that you link into that and become fulfilled and happy, that's not how it works, and it never will. So that must be seen. If that's not seen, what will happen is you're going to keep going back there and thinking you can solve your problem that way. Once again, deck chairs on the Titanic. So, and once again, let yourself do that when you do it, but just see it and move away from it and say, hey, yeah, this is really great. It's a good thing when it's needed, but isn't needed for what I'm doing here in this new journey of wisdom. Okay? All right. So in secret number 4, you have to see that the fake story identity cannot be fulfilled and happy. Said that. So you've been misled to believe that your story or fake identity can be content. The reason is that that's what the path of knowledge teaches. It's a descriptive exercise. It describes the things, puts them together, and then it comes to conclusions. That's what happens in the knowledge world. It's a belief that knowledge can solve all problems, and I'm telling you that's not the case. And in fact, I'm taking you to the water's edge of where knowledge can take you. And in fact, you're there. The reason you're feeling the way you are is you have exhausted, likely, all of these story approaches to this particular problem that you're feeling. So everything you've learned to do in service of your story identity, won't work now. The problem you have is not a story identity or knowledge path problem. It's a wisdom path. So in order to relieve your malaise, you must shift your rooting. Now here you go. Instead of trying to root in a story identity that moves all over the place, you need to root into a true identity that doesn't. And that's where the presence and all of the outputs that I'm talking about emerge from. You see, in true identity, there's no need for a story any longer. The stories still spin themselves out, but there's not a need for it. Have you ever noticed that people that you perceive have great presence? They just kind of live their life. It's effortless. As I said, it's just an effortless stepping into what's next. Have you ever noticed that incredibly authentic folks don't need an answer all the time? They are who they are. The story that arises, they're not too worried about whether it fits every single time. If they don't know the answer, guess what? They don't know the answer, and that's okay. That's authentic. And in the knowledge world, one of the pushes are you always have to know all the answers. So you can immediately see just in that little example that if you engaged in a story identity solution and had to know everything, that you immediately are out of your own authenticity if you really don't. That's simple. So you need to see that. You need to really embrace that that's the case. So here's another testimonial. I tried many tactics to feel better. I still felt shipwrecked on the rocks. It never dawned on me that all of my education and effort was spent on a fake me. I knew the minute that Alan pointed me to a deeper me, I had struck gold. I've never looked back since that day, Calvin K. Interestingly enough, think about that. How did he know that? Well, he knew it, right? There's an old story about a famous poet that asked a child why the grass is green, and the child said, well, the grass is green because the grass is green. That's a child's response. It's obvious the grass is green. In the knowledge world, we expect for you to know why. In the true identity world, the grass is green because the grass is green. And Calvin knew that that pointer was a striking of gold because it struck inside of him that place where his true identity responded. And he's never looked back since that day, of course. Of course he hasn't, because he stepped into that new place. All right, you ready for the last one? Here it is. And this is really important. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, but you must find a mentor and you must get your spiritual MBA. So we're going to talk about both of those, but a mentor is a style of engagement in the true identity space. And you notice it's not books, it's not films, it's not it's seminars, it's not anything. It's an actual intertwined experience. And I'll explain why what your spiritual MBA is to me and why I use that term. So here you are. What's a mentor? A mentor is the fellow that jumped into the hole and is now going to combine with you to walk your way out by pointing you to the things that you need to assemble and you need to embrace so that walking out of the hole is possible. Now, I want you to understand that mentorship has really changed over the years. When I was young, everything was in the same place. I would go into a business and everybody was there. Everybody had a context or a platform where they lived together. We all knew what everybody's initiatives were, what their projects were. We knew how they were. We could watch them in action. We knew how they were swimming in the water, so to speak, of our corporate existence. Well, what happened over time was that world, that flow world, became a world of distributed pieces. And so now most companies don't have a centralized place. They don't have a centralized flow, and a person cannot look in and see how it's going, because that's what mentors did. Mentors were these folks that looked into what was going on and said, oh, I want to help that guy, I want to help that woman, because I resonate with where they are and I really think that I can work with them. And that was how it happened, and it was freely given, and it was just part of the experience, and people were excited to do that, both be mentored and have a mentor. And what happened over time is, in the world of distribution, that was the piece we tended to ignore and lose, or maybe we didn't notice we were losing it. But in our distributed world, mentors and folks that are being mentored don't have a chance to look around and see where the wisdom is. It's not built that way anymore. You get emails, you have projects, you go here, you go there, things are assembled in the moment, work, and then poof, they disappear. So the world of flow is a lot less present, and the world of distributed components is much more present. So how do we get mentorship now? Well, that's what I was doing with the large companies. They would ask me to come in, and we would create things like leadership institutes where people would build business cases for 5 days, and we would work with them to try to replicate some of the flow. And that was how we tried to deliver mentorship into companies. So what is a spiritual MBA, and why do I call it that? Well, I call it that because that's the distributed component that you now need to step into. See, normally I would say, hey, listen, I see that you're out there on the floor. I'm here. I'm the person that's charged with mentoring in this company, one of them, and I really would like to link up with you, but I can't do that anymore because, well, I don't know you, I don't know where you are, and I can't see you. So the component of being in a spiritual MBA, and all that is the process of mentorship to give you your relationship or your stance or tethering into your true identity and how that true identity drives the rest of your business career and life. So now it's being described and delivered into a component. In a component, and that's what this is. That's what a spiritual MBA is. So it's just like going to get your real MBA, right? And And why is finding a mentor important? Well, finding a mentor is important because to get out of the hole, you don't need somebody scribbling a bunch of notes and throwing them down to you. Those are knowledge responses to a wisdom problem, right? So let me describe you. When I was young and I had my first client at Price Waterhouse, IBM, I was assigned to a project, and there was a really famous fellow there who was an economist. And that economist, University of Chicago, I was assigned to work with him. And the reason that he grabbed me is because he loved people that would argue economic theory. And so I got to argue economic theory with him. A couple of us did, actually. And that was how he found us. That was the piece he looked for. Now, that was a knowledge-based mentorship, no doubt, because we were arguing economic theory. But that's how it happened in that day, right? Well, now guess what? There isn't someone out there who's looking in and can grab you. You finding a mentor is now on you. So when you come to this place, and the reason you find people stuck in this place and they can't find a way out, it's because we're not used to having folks who need mentorship try to go find mentorship. And I'm talking about real mentorship, where there is a combined engagement and where what happens is examined and scrubbed and deconstructed in order to understand how it lives in the wisdom terrain. That's what's important. How do you access that? Well, there's more of a responsibility on you than there used to be, and that's why it's important. Your finding a mentor is the only way it's going to happen. So there you go. Finding a mentor puts a friend in the hole with you, and it empowers you to practice on the new terrain. Mentorship is a personal experience. It involves pointers, it involves wisdom, and it involves a whole lot of conversation that is very dissimilar to the kinds of conversations that you likely are accustomed to in your corporate career. So that's the essence and the big secret. So from getting prepared, looking at your identity, your story identity, your true identity, and then understanding that your story identity isn't where the answer is, that's really important. And then actually combining to address the solution. Those are the 5 things that change the stance that you're in right now and give you a chance to get out of the hole. So what I want to do is I want to do a direct practice with you right now, because that's what mentors do. So you want a little taste of mentorship? Here it is. We're going to do a practice together. And I'm going to ask you to do this in a little different way than you used to, right? So you can locate your internal stories right now. So ask yourself, who am I? Do that seriously. Now, what are the answers? Okay, watch the answers happen. If you actually ask yourself in a really sincere way, I'm going to guess right now, there's a bunch of stories that are being told in your mind. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. All right? Isn't that what you've been trying to change to get out of your hole? I'm going to guess it is, right? So there's what we talked about already, right? Trying to change your story identity, that collection of stories. Hasn't worked so far, not going to work. But what that direct experience does is give you a chance to really not only see it intellectually, but to experience it. Wow, he's right. Look at those stories. Those are the ones I've been trying to change. Yes, they do fly when I ask myself what's going on. Oh, there's something deeper than that. That's where we're headed. That's a direct experience. So now, here's what you can do. You can go out and watch in real life, right? So just don't do it with me. Go into your work experience now and start to watch all the stories that fly. You're going to see it's all stories. Basically, what corporate and business and entrepreneurs are, we're story managers. And when we can come up with a new one, well, that's a new idea. That's in what they call the white space. Isn't that incredible? Totally fun. Now, think about it. Why haven't all those seminars, courses, and books that you've imbibed not worked? Well, that's what you've gone to in order to tinker with your story identity. Right? That's what they focus on. That they too are trying to tinker with your story identity for that one little moment of happiness And if you get that one little moment, that's great, but that's all you're going to get. And you probably have that experience too. I certainly did. I used to have those little moments of happiness and think, I hit pay dirt, and then I'd find out the next day, not so much. So that's a direct experience. That's the kind of work that you're going to do with a true mentor. Here's another testimonial. Alan demands connection and intimacy in his teachings. His insistence on experiencing my story and true identity seemed a little weird at first, but now I can say how bold, how brave, how profound. I recommend his programs with great love and respect. Notice the words again: connection, intimacy, experiencing, right? Of course those seemed a little weird at first. This is a whole new terrain. You're going to dive into a place that you likely haven't spent a lot of time in before. So of course you're going to feel how bold, how brave, and how profound. These are things you haven't experienced before, and when you experience them and you start to dive into them, your response is going to be from the wisdom space. So those are the 5 secrets, and I want you to notice, here's what I promised today. I said I was going to give you 5 secrets that you needed to know before you can even think about emerging from the way you feel. I'm hoping that I've locked that down for you. And I'm hoping that you see that you need to step into an entirely new terrain in order to step into that challenge. I'm hoping that your frustration might have eased a little bit because I've described and I've laid out the where you need to walk into now. And you're going to see that your career difficulties are an invitation for spiritual growth. Remember, we talked about that. So spiritual is just a category that we use for presence, for feel-based and subjective experiential happenings. We locate those off into the woo-woo and esoteric area in our heads a lot of times. And yet, the greatest leaders in our corporate world are rife with exactly those attributes. I told you I'd tell you why your seminars and leadership books were inadequate solutions. It's because they address an identity that you can't get your arms around anyway. And I'm hoping that you understand why you need mentorship and a community. And the reason you need a community is that you need to be engaged with other folks that are in this conversation. What will happen is that you will be pulled a lot to go back into the knowledge world, because that is the bias that the business world has. It's a world of tangible nuts and bolts and results. And because of that, anything that can't be described, if you have to point to something rather than identifying something, immediately that bias comes into play, and you'll be biased away from that has fuzzier edges or that has feeling components. And that's why I pointed out all those words. Don't see a lot of those words in a typical corporate or entrepreneurial PowerPoint, but you saw a lot of them today. And that's where the action lives. So what do you need to do right now? Well, understand that you need to be assertive and you need to take action. This is going to be a repeat of the 5 things. This is what you need to do. You need to prepare to climb out of the hole. You need to discover your story identity. You need to discover your true identity. And you must know at your core that the fake you cannot become fulfilled and happy. Those all follow the same ones. That's what you need to do. So that focused urgency and that openness and curiosity, there you go. We did a direct practice. I'm hoping that you're open and curious about what that's all about. And you must find a mentor and get your spiritual MBA. You need to say, I'm willing to add on to my career the component called mentorship, and I'm going to get my spiritual MBA. I'm going to immerse myself in an experience. So think about this for a minute. When you first learn a language, you're sitting on your front room floor and your mother starts to talk about whatever she talks about, and that's your first language lesson. That's called immersion. And every language lesson that you get in your mother tongue comes exactly that way. Later they tell you, verbs and nouns and the rest of it. They describe what your learning has been, but by that time you've got language. You're ready for that. In fact, you transact all of your learning, the structure. It lays on top of your natural sense of immersive language. You have that already. But being humans, we're really, really bright, so we thought we could come up with a way to teach people that. So we said, hey, let's use the knowledge-based approach. And what we're going to do is we're going to create books. So if you need to learn a second language, we're going to teach you first verbs and then nouns and then something else. And so we're not going to really see that the most intelligent way to learn as a human is the immersive experience. We're going to teach you this other experience. Now notice every time someone's gone through that, they likely have heavily accented second languages. Why is that? Well, that's because when you learn something from the knowledge world, you really haven't placed it in the immersive aspect of wisdom itself. Your natural language is a product of your first immersion in wisdom, and it was on your mother's front room floor. That's what mentoring is going to do. You need to find a mentor to get back on your mother's front room floor. Your spiritual MBA is the time you spend in that container or that bubble, and direct action. So when you learn from your mother, direct action and practices, right? Go get that from me. Go do this. Go do that. It was all the stuff from your mother, your education with her, direct action and practices. They're the way home. And guess what? You get to reround to that place. Your mentor is like your corporate mother. So I wanted to finish with one note, one last flavor of what it's like to be in mentorship. Jerry Skelet, he's one of my best friends, if not my best friend. He's the CEO of a company called Spaces Parking. Jerry was the first person I mentored to get his spiritual MBA. We did that in the late 90s, 97, 98. And the reason we did it that way was the world was just transforming into this componentized and distributed approach. And so Jerry and I created a company, and we were out getting funding and executing on that company. But it turned out that what our focus was something different, and how we did our company reflected that. Let me relate his comments to you. For 8 years, I worked side by side with Alan Shelton. Alan and I spoke daily, drilling down deeply to solve the most pressing issues of the day for what turned out to be our grossly underfunded, brilliant business experience, 24/7 digital. Minute by minute, we had to examine our path closely, deliberately, to determine whether our actions were emerging from the heart or from the head. We were seeking the heart decision, the one influenced not by textbooks, ego, or judgment, but by whatever God was trying to accomplish through us. We were simply participants in a global Shakespeare scale play. We accepted whatever arose from the heart, and that's what we would say and do. Through our being intimately present and accepting, the path kept revealing itself in all its wonder. We impacted lives and an entire industry and accomplished more than what was logically possible. It didn't make any sense, yet this natural movement was all-knowing. What an awesome adventure. I want you to notice how he described what we did, not the normal description for a business. That business, we had funded it, I think, to about $12 million. We had already approved the last $17 million, and we're on our way to finishing a rights-protected imagery concept that had never been seen before in that space. And 9/11 happened. And 2 weeks after 9/11, we went to meet for our last $17 million, which was already approved and ready to go, and it was withdrawn, like it was for most companies at the time. And Jerry and I were left to figure out what to do with what was left of that initiative. And that is what he is describing. He is describing what happened in that experience. So recognize that was how mentorship weaved itself in to an actual experience of trying to put a company together. So right now, you can either stay mired in your hole or you can courageously step out. The true you awaits if you take action. So how can I help you? Well, I'm hoping it's pretty obvious. Give me a call. We can talk. I'll answer all of your questions about today's webinar. You may have a few, and we can discuss a step-by-step plan for you to get out of your hole and get your spiritual MBA. Don't feel hesitant. If you have some instinct, do call me. Whatever you're going through right now, I've likely heard it before and helped solve it. And there's no cost for that. I think most of us who are mentors out there are willing to talk to whoever we think is a good match for us. Much like Milton Friedman looked out there and grabbed me to argue about financial theory. And Stephen Covey and Peter Drucker reached out and decided that they were going to take some young guy who might have been a hopeless cause, but they made that decision to mentor. So I stand available to do that. So there's no cost. It's just the conversation. So the question is, are you ready to commit to forging forward as you emerge as the true you? If so, set an appointment. Talk to me. When you click the button, you're going to go to my calendar. You're going to follow the instructions on the page. I truly do look forward to speaking with you soon. Take care. I'll see you later. I leave you with one of my favorite pictures. This is one of my dogs, Odie. He's been gone some time now, but this is he and I walking into the sunset, and I hope we can find you a big old Odie. We can find your sunset, and we'll let you walk into it. So give me a call. I'll talk to you later. Bye.